So we are reviewing Uzumaki this month. So I don't know, how do we do this? Let's just jump right into it. Let's just do scores. So I think my score is, I would give it an 8. I enjoyed it quite a bit. There were definitely some things I didn't like about it. Partly, I think that was due to my expectations. It was kind of more episodic than I really thought that it would be, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do think it probably should have been shorter. But I mean, overall, I think it's incredibly, incredibly good. So I think for me, it'd be like a solid 8. So how about Keith?
I give it a 0. I hated it, but it was very good. I just don't like reading it, which I think is a good reflection of its quality, is how unnerving I found it. But I did make it through. I'm exaggerating. It's yes, I thought it was very good, but also I do not like this genre, so it was never going to be my thing. And I knew that going in, but I'm still glad I read it, and I thought it was very effective. And I don't know if it's your thing. I think it was really good, but it was definitely not my thing. So, yeah, it was. I know some people, like, I went on Wikipedia after I finished it, and people were complaining about the humor in it, and I was like, oh, but actually, thought that was, well done when they did it. But, like, Carlos, your background, it's matching up perfectly with your eye.
Yeah, and it's freaking me out.
I realized I could do it, and then I decided I had to.
Yeah.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. God.
Yeah, like, actually, I feel like I liked it more in the back half. It does seem to change dramatically. Like, the first, it's a bunch of disconnected stories, and then the second is like it develops a through plot. And, it felt like 2 different books, and I actually liked the second half. I don't know, I was able to race through it a lot better. Lucy?
I messed up and didn't read this. I initially read this when I was like 19, I think, and I just read almost all of Uzumaki, all of Junji Ito that I could get a hold of. My memory is kind of hazy of it. I do remember the hair fight being very well, and that being like absolutely ridiculous. No, I have really fond memories of this book, and I think this is a stronger Junji Ito. Like, his art is definitely a 10. The book itself, let's say a 7, because I don't think there was anything deeper to it, but maybe they're missing something. That's my time.
Oh, you gotta call someone.
You guys call. I don't know who's here. Real quick.
Well, let's call Mr. Salazar, who creeped us all out.
This book is just the gift that keeps on giving. I'm gonna give it a 9. I thought it's one of the best horror books that I've ever read. And I don't know, I really, even the episodic nature of it, the way that it built on itself, I really liked. And very disturbing and distressing. And also, I don't know, like, I grabbed his other book by accident. But I think I really like sort of the weird dream logic that sort of radiates throughout all of his stories. So I don't know, I was really into it. I'm gonna give it a 9. And I gotta call somebody. Popcorn Jolie.
Okay. I don't know who's a bigger scaredy cat, me or Keith. He made it all the way through this book. I didn't make it to the end, but that was just like a time constraint thing. This book scared the shit out of me. I hate it. I give it more than a 0 though, because the art was, like Lucy said, it was really freaking good. The art was beautiful, fantastic. But the writing, it might be just translation in the dialogue, just kind of like stiff. So all around, I give the book a 7. But if it was like separate, I give the art a 9, and then the dialogue 6.5. The story's kind of, it's pretty much like spirals, and I don't know where it goes from there. Other than it does a very good job at just focusing on spirals and making it really freaking scary. Like this book is messed up, but anyway, it's like it reminded me of like all the Japanese horror that I watched through my fingers, and I want to cry. So okay, that's it. I pick Patrick.
I'll give it an 8.5. I thought the art was fantastic. He's an excellent draftsman, composer. I don't know what you like. The way that he frames shots is just really phenomenal. I really like also the anthology aspect of it, which I was not expecting. So it kind of felt like a full season of a TV show, which is something I enjoyed. Alexander, not Hamilton, but go anyway.
I will not wrap my review because I can't. I'll also give it an 8. I thought the artwork was fantastic and the story was pretty good for a cosmic horror story. And I usually love horror, and I found this pretty terrifying. I was not expecting the episode narrative either. And I'll go to Sean.
I would also give it an 8. The art was incredible, and there were a lot of concepts that really creeped me out. But it had that stiff dialogue like Jolie was talking about. A lot of Japanese manga has that for me. I don't know if it's just the way things are translated or just language differences. Like I guess I would need to know the language to compare, but I really enjoyed the art. So I guess an 8. Did not like the way it ended. Like I like things explained more, and it was very abrupt, I felt.
Did your cat like it?
A little bit.
She doesn't like anything.
So that's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
She's quite terrifying herself.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last but not least, is Catherine still there? We can't hear you. Can you hear? I see her box lighting up.
Here.
No.
My computer.
You're breaking up real bad.
Mm-hmm.
He sounds like Gladys.
You're not caught in a spiral, are you, Catherine?
We have to save Catherine before she proceeds to nail people.
Oh no.
Before she turns into a snow person.
Yeah.
Okay. No. I wonder if it's, you know, I had issues with this before. It might be I don't know, Wi-Fi? I don't know. Darn.
Catherine, it sounds like you're in a time warp. Oh.
Okay.
She sent a message. She's going to log out and then
Okay.
pop up part one.
Okay, so we'll wait and see what happens.
No. All right. Well, I did. It was super last minute, but I did write up some discussion questions. I did send those through email, and I put them on the Facebook event as well. So you don't
All right.
really need to go through them in any particular order. But I don't know if any particularly jumped out at anybody. What's that, Carlos?
Oh, no, Catherine was asking if it was better, and I said it was a little bit better.
Are you back with us, Catherine?
I think so, if you guys can hear me.
It's super
You
choppy.
sound like a
If not, well, it seems like maybe not.
Okay,
wait.
that was good. That was good right there.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yes. Very clear. Yes. Yes.
Okay. I literally didn't do anything, so I have no idea what happened. That's okay.
It's weird. It goes in and out.
We'll go with it. Okay. Well, I don't know. If I get cut out again, then fine. We'll just feel it. But no, I reread it for the fourth time this morning just to kind of refresh my memory. So it's one of my favorites. It's a solid 9. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So a 9. Great. We caught that bit at least. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine.
Maybe.
So, how like for the other people here, I don't know how much exposure previously to this you had with Junji Ito. I had heard of him, I'd known him by reputation for quite a long time, but this is the first time I've ever actually read one of his books. I did read the Enigma of Amagara Fault, which is one of his short stories. It's quite a famous one. That was the only other thing of his that I'd read. I don't know if anyone else had any previous experience with him. Clearly, Catherine did. I'll take that as a no.
No, this was my first.
Name sounds familiar.
I mean, he's quite famous. I mean, he's sort of the horror mangaka. I'm sure there are others, but he's kind of the signature. I don't know if he's like the Stephen King of manga. I'm not sure if that would be accurate or not, but he's quite well known.
It's also a lot less gory than some of the Japanese manga horror that I've browsed and was like, nope, not for me.
Very much so. That's part of why I like him so much. It's not overly sexual or gory or the awful mixture of both, which I fucking hate when I see that. So yeah, I really appreciate that. His stuff is gross, but none of it is deeply unsettling to some degree. It's just kind of eerie.
No, I mean it's super unsettling, but not in that sort of Eli Roth. Now I feel dirty inside kind of a way.
Yeah,
it's not it doesn't.
It's not exploitative in that creepy. See, creepy is not a good word because this is also creepy, but not in that.
It's not sleazy. It's not sleazy.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I feel like he's not an asshole. Not in a way that Eli Roth is kind of an asshole. He is not an asshole.
I mean, I really also appreciate that, there are twists that, don't feel...
Pun intended.
Yeah. There are twists that don't feel forced. I think originally, I'm thinking of, really all of the stories, but it's sort of progression is oh, I understand better now what is happening, and it makes it worse. I'm thinking really of the snail story, the original snail story, when the two snails mate. I was like, oh yeah, of course, that's a possible thing, but
which is, it's all about their latent homosexuality, obviously.
I mean,
which is how I'm reading that.
I respect your interpretation.
Thank you. I didn't need that, but thank you, Oliver.
Yeah, so I mean, I was kind of a little bit surprised when I was reading it. I was always kind of under the impression that it was kind of a fairly conventional novel format. It wasn't until after I finished the book that I read about how it was originally released serially as part of like a manga magazine.
For
apparently.
kids.
What is it for kids?
Yeah.
For kids?
Yeah.
Fucked up.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Really?
so it was definitely like a lot more episodic in format than I kind of expected it to be. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I did kind of feel like, you know, the more it went on, the more sort of ridiculous it felt that like any of these characters would still be like willingly living in this town. I feel like the protagonist she has like good moments where she's like acting smartly and like making good decisions and like she's not like a terrible character, but there are like moments and it's just like so inconsistent where she's just like incredibly fucking stupid. And like, I don't know, it kind of like broke my suspension of disbelief a little bit. But I know, Carlos, you mentioned that you felt it was kind of like operating on like a dream logic. So do you feel
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like, yes, exactly that. And I mean, that's, you know, maybe also, you know, it's almost the David Lynch problem. It's like, well, sometimes it is just sort of ridiculous and silly. And sometimes it is like legitimately like unsettling or kind of, I don't know, there are parts of this book that are also kind of weirdly like beautiful. And I think that's also, I mean, like Patrick's background is like,
yeah.
I love that spread. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And I feel like that
it's also, she's a teenager. I don't know, teenagers are dumb.
I feel like that the town wouldn't let them go anyway. Like if they try to leave, like as we saw eventually, like it wouldn't let you go.
Yeah.
Well, the one guy who's like a part-time resident, like he would go in and out, and he was like, he grasped that something was wrong, and it was like, why, you know, I get maybe like he's staying to save Kiri, but, you know, the logic, it was like, you know, when you have a typhoon calling your name and killing people to find you.
Or you have like one of the students at school like transforming into a giant snail and people are just like, oh, well that's something you don't see every day.
Well, I felt like that was like the whole town was becoming, you know, like they knew it was wrong, but they couldn't leave.
They were mesmerized by the spiral.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's giving it too much credit, but there is, in sort of every town, I don't know, this is sort of a weird, like weirdly topical book for right now. Because there's like a bunch of things that are obviously wrong, and yet people sort of stick around and go about their life, right? Like, this is a weird book to be reading in a pandemic, because it's like, oh, we shouldn't be behaving this way. Like, or like many people should not be behaving this way. And yet they still are. And like everybody else is sort of like, oh shit, they shouldn't be doing that. But like, like we say things, but you know, it's like, we're like the one character just sort of like huddled in his room saying, like, this town is infected with spiral. Like, like we always ignore things that are terribly wrong. Like I find that sort of belief. Like, what are you gonna do if one of the kids at school turns into a snail? Like, what if you don't have the money to move? You're gonna stick around. Like,
well, the point's like well taken, but I mean, like, like the solution to our thing is not leaving. That's because it's everywhere. So like, where would you go?
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Okay, fair. I mean, they're not going to let you in, but true. Yes.
They have to let you in first, pal. Apparently, it's hard to get in there.
We'll find like an aquatic coyote.
Yeah. Oh God.
So are any of you? I don't think any of you are, but are none of you like know Japanese or have read this in the native language? No. Okay.
Mm-mm.
I'm waiting for somebody to say, well, no, but I have read a lot of anime, so I do consider myself something of an expert on Japanese.
Oh God.
No, I think that's like a concurrent thing every time we try it with this group is that anytime anyone asks that question, we're all like, not really. I mean, Carlos and
I've read
Lucy, I feel like are the most well-read.
Well, thank you.
Manga-wise.
No.
I can see through your.
The honored weeb elders.
Yeah.
We
They
bow your-
have the biggest body pillows of all of us.
No. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. I forget where we were going with this. No,
It was 180.
Yeah.
I think Patrick was going to ask something about Japanese culture.
No, I mean like the dialogue of it. If like this.
Oh.
That's a good
Style,
adjective.
honestly, because I've heard and read things that were more articulate.
I mean, I will say it's a completely different syntax. Like I remember reading there's a guy who taught himself Japanese translating video games, and he talks about like how incredibly difficult it is.
Well, there's that too. Like it depends on the text.
Yeah.
Some of it, like fucking. We were having a fucking shit fit when what was it called, Milk Chan or whatever, made it to Adult Swim, and they like butchered the translation. All the weebs were throwing mud at each other, and I was like just with my popcorn watching them fight. So there has been complaint about Japanese culture trying to translate its way into American culture, but I feel like as much as I've read of his work, and I've even read some fan translations because I couldn't wait. Like I feel like this is just the best you're gonna get. Like it's just. It's more visual, it's less.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's not like an expert at prose. He's
Yeah.
more focused on that visual communication.
Exactly. And he does
Gotcha.
that very, very well.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense in a way that it wasn't a kid's book as much as people got upset about it. Because it very much reminds me of that Alan Schwartz stuff, which would have like terrifying children's illustrations. Like, kind of stories.
It does sort of have an almost like kind of an almost like goosebumpsy quality to it in a way, but like turned up to 11.
Yeah, but I mean,
like bumps on crack.
Yeah, fine.
Do people like? Because
Young
people
adult.
died in those things. I mean, like Goosebumps. I mean, it's been so long, but like, people died, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it was like a PG-13 thing, but there were actual casualties.
Yeah.
Yep.
Been a while.
I don't think any casualties like this, though.
No.
Or
Oh, I love that.
visuals like this. There wasn't. This shit didn't exist in Goosebumps.
That was one of my favorite. I think that definitely was one of my favorite stories. The pregnant women, and they just like pull out these fucking like drills, and they're just,
Where
like,
did they get those?
suck their
There's
breath.
Spiral provides.
The spiral.
Yeah, what's her name? I wrote down a cheat sheet.
You want your list?
Yeah, I wrote down all their names.
Man, let me tell you,
No,
you're gonna find me a freak like that.
So scary. Why?
are those the mosquito ladies?
Yeah, with their provided drills.
Yeah, I bet you there's like a old storage closet in the hospital where they used to perform trepanations. Is that how you pronounce that?
I think so. Yeah.
They're probably
There's
rusty.
so many drills. Was that the same story as the baby crawling back in, or was that
Yeah.
That was the
continuing?
story. The next
No,
story
that was right after.
That was right
There
after.
was a continuation.
Yes.
That was
like so they
disturbing.
like cut her open and put the baby back in, and then sew her up.
Yeah, it didn't crawl inside of her. They did like a V section or whatever you call that, like right down the middle.
It's a reverse C-section.
You know,
They put that baby right back in.
Yep.
You know, We never found out what happened to them.
To who?
The reverse babies. Like they I guess they just left them at the hospital. It's like, well, their story, you know.
No, they got yeah, it like they people discover the room with the mushrooms, and is it Kiri? Kiko. She just runs out of the hospital, and then it ends.
Yeah, Kiri's the main character. Her cousin was Kiko.
Yeah, so it's like, and I think that's why I gave the writing a 6.5, because not only is the dialogue just like it's a little stilted, but a lot of the issues ended that way, where like that was it. Like they didn't really clean it up. She just kind of exits stage right, and then suddenly things just like go back to normal, or they disappear. Like in the house, they move away, and then the wood boils or whatever, they just disappear off of her family's body, and it's just kind of explained away in one sentence. So that I kind of like not a fan of that.
Yeah.
It feels almost like sitcom-y in a way.
Yeah.
Like reversion back to status quo.
Yeah, it's really funny what the Japanese find funny. Ooh, those crazy Japanese people.
Because let's see, so she escaped from the hospital, and then she says, I have no idea what happened there after that. I wasn't about to go back and find out.
Never mentioned again.
I guess presumably a forever preggers woman is going around sucking blood, I guess.
I mean, yeah. They just don't run into her in the post-apocalypse. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to give him a kind of forced justification, but I think there's something to it. Because, like, it's not truly sitcom-y, because, like, there are consequences to, like, what happens. Like, one thing that I really appreciated is she just kept her new haircut. Like, it didn't revert back. She just kept the same haircut after her hair got cut. But like a lot of these things like sort of spiral back. Like not to force it too much, but you know. Like, I didn't think that the snail people were going to be a major part of the plot, but they come back. Yeah, they come back to them.
And what a way they come back to them.
What a way. That reminded me of, it was like the Greek story, the person goes to hell, and then she eats the food. Like, that's when I was like, oh, they're not getting out of this. That's when she ate the snail meat. Because it was like, you know, like, I thought that they were going to get away. You know, like, there's, you know, the horror story trope where, like, the people say, like, you can't do that and then get away. I felt that was kind of like, you know, like, and it's not really, well, I think the closest analogy is like the story of Persephone, I think it is, that goes to hell, and she just like the 6 pomegranate seeds.
Well, I don't think she goes as much as Hades steals her.
Well, yeah, but she has to go back because she ate the food while she was down there.
Yeah.
And then like when that happened, I was like, oh, this is, you know, she's not eating the food. You know, her brother was eating the ferns. She's not done anything like that these other people have done. Then she does that, and I was like, she's doomed.
Yeah. And all these motherfuckers be doomed. It's so weird. Yeah. 'Cause we don't find out till later that they're locked into this town, right? Like after, in like sort of the chaos episodes.
Yeah, I think there was a typhoon, and then people or the government started sending help, and then they find out no one can leave. I think at some point they even send naval ships to rescue them, and then they get sucked into a whirlpool.
It's the news reporter Chi who, like, that's when they established that nobody has been able to leave. And I think that's when they first explicitly mentioned trying to leave, and you know, she's the one who tries going down the tunnel to walk out, but yeah, and she shows up pretty late too. So
Yeah.
I mean, like, people were going in and out of the train station before that. I think there's a time jump there too. Well, he published these in like 3 different volumes. Like, there was gaps between some of the stories, so I think the last third might be a more cohesive story than the rest.
I think they were released over the course of like 2 years on a chapter by chapter basis, I think. But I'm not sure.
So, Jolie, to go back to the reverse Prager story.
Yes.
How would you have liked that to be wrapped up?
I don't know. I would have liked it if they all would have just like started eating everyone in the town.
Oh, okay. That's a choice.
It is.
That's a choice.
I mean,
30 Days of Night route.
yeah, or like if somehow there was something else in the hospital that was like there to destroy them.
Because otherwise we're just left with this dangling plot of this woman who seems to need blood all the time, sort of loose, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like it's her cousin. So now like awkward family reunion much. Like, how do you reconcile that? Like, you just left your cousin in the hospital in the neighboring prefecture, and like she's a blood-sucking, reverse pregnant monster. You want to like help her out? You tiptoed out of the hospital after your ankle healed? Okay, I guess.
There's a lot of people in this town who just like die these horrific deaths, and then the townspeople are like, "Well, it is what it is."
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe that's just like the spiral infecting their minds.
That's not how car springs work.
I don't
know. I don't know. I'm going to give them just a little more credit. There's a lot of shitty stuff that like happens that we just ignore. Like, I don't know. And like, I feel like parts of it are better now, but like there are like family secrets that are sort of like open family secrets in every family that like nobody talks about.
But I think there's a difference between like, I don't know, Uncle So. We all know Uncle So-and-so is a Republican versus like, well, you got to file police reports with this thing. And by the way, she's still in that hospital just walking around.
Doing shit like this, being generally creepy.
I feel like this is a thing you just don't like ignore. Like I guess you could, but like, I don't know.
I don't recommend it.
All my cousins live like several states away, so I guess if they turn into like blood-sucking reverse pregnant people, I guess I wouldn't care. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. John turned into okay, whatever. Moving on. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed they turned into snails.
Yeah.
We can explain it away. No,
or like mushrooms.
Yeah.
Are the snails the only people that survived?
I think only the one snail. I don't know if her brother is the only one who survived because they ate all the other snails. So.
Well, presumably at the end of it, no one survived, right? Because they all get sucked down into the whatever that was.
Well, I don't know if her brother did because he was.
That's right. He was on the cliff.
Yeah, and they told him to go away. he potentially could have made it out, but it's not answered.
I just don't feel like he's gonna build up enough speed to overcome the inertia of the spiral, being a snail and all.
No.
But time goes differently. You know, yeah, like what is it? The time slows down the closer you get. So maybe, I don't know. It seems like actually the opposite. Now that I think about it, like.
I do love the choice that he made where he turns into a snail, but he still has that tuft of hair, which is both kind of, it's somewhat adorable.
I mean, it's
like a little tuft of hair, like, oh.
Maybe it was for us because you could show me two snails and I wouldn't be able to tell them apart, but you give one of them a haircut.
They did that in the earlier snail story too. Gave the long-haired guy. He kept his hair in snail form. So we'll go to my questions here. So I was kind of reading a little bit, kind of about the background of the book, and so in one of his interviews, he mentions kind of like his perception of the spiral. And he kind of came at it from two directions. Junji Ito, the author, he said that kind of in traditional Japanese media, spirals are kind of seen as like cutesy. They're like drawn on characters' cheeks and manga and things of that nature. Kind of wanted to take like a cutesy image and like subvert it and make it dark and fucked up. He also said they kind of like imagined it as being something that was kind of representative of infinity, because it can theoretically go on forever. So I don't know if anybody, while they were reading this, had any kind of, I don't know, not even necessarily like a conscious, but just some kind of idea of like what that spiral might represent. If it was a metaphor for anything or if it just kind of had, I don't know, some sort of significance behind it.
Visually, anyone with like, is it trypophobia? The fear of, yeah, which, that's me. Visually, I can't deal with it.
You can't deal with the spiral?
Yeah, so I can't even like look at Patrick's part of the screen right now. Like it's.
I'm sorry.
No,
turn that off.
It's so, and the tighter the spiral gets, and the smaller and closer together the holes get, it's just like, it's, yeah. I mean, it's one of those weird things where like you look at it and it's like I can't look away, but I'm looking, but I'm not looking, and it makes my skin crawl. But it's effective in giving me, it makes me uncomfortable. It gives me unpleasant feelings, and I think that's the goal. And there's a lot of that in the imagery in this book, and it's very effective because those are the hardest parts for me to get through. Like the large atmospheric stuff, that stuff I can deal with, but just like the tiny holes and like the bloodshot eyes, like those scary freaking looking through the wall grudge eyes, can't do it. I don't like, I don't think, here's one. So when they're walking, like I can't do it. It's so terrifying to me. Like, look at those little spirals. Okay, anyway. It's really funny that he says that about spirals in manga and anime, Japanese culture. They're seen as like cute, because the only time I've ever seen spirals is on like Jigsaw's face. Where else are spirals? Oh, and like Tim Burton uses spirals in all of his art, and it's creepy. It's more artful than creepy in Tim Burton's work, but spirals are unsettling in North America.
I think they are. So I always, when I think of spirals, I kind of instinctively think of like a spiral staircase, and specifically looking down a spiral staircase, and how it, you could theoretically just like look down, and it would just like keep going down and down and down and down forever.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is something kind of like instinctively creepy about them.
Or hypnotists.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's more common in, American culture probably than Japanese culture, where you have that like spiral thing where it's like you're watching this and you're getting sleepy, and it's like, and the people who are doing that are never good guys. So
The main villain of the Dark Tower series, his symbol is like the Eye of Ra combined with a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Crimson.
Yeah. And it's like, while do you know what? I think the spiral is not terrifying, but the emotions that it evokes and like the unsettling nature of them, to me, is like the most horrifying thing. And it's like, that's scarier than being terrified by blood or gore. Like those are the kinds of things that like don't allow me to sleep at night. I think about them for hours until the sun rises. So yeah. This book is good at those kinds of feelings.
Making you lose sleep.
Yeah, I see that there's a question. I don't know if we want to skip right to it, but there's a question about coloring in the book. But maybe we should talk about the cosmic horror part first.
We don't necessarily have to. I did want to just touch on one thing real quick. Keith, you mentioned kind of spirals and their like association with hypnotism and hypnotists, and that kind of like, I thought that was like a very salient point, because I mean that's very much kind of associated with sort of like delving into your subconscious and kind of the loss of control over your conscious mind, which is very much, I think, applicable to this book. And, because there are several moments in the book where people kind of become like subsumed by these compulsions, like these behavioral compulsions, like the dad who becomes obsessed with spirals, and the mom who, kind of develops this intense phobia, and this phobia like leads into self-harm. And I think that was like one of the really strong elements of horror in the book, is this idea of kind of losing control over your own behavior, and kind of the destructive ways that can lead. Anyway, I just thought that was relevant.
I thought the book.
I was just going to say, let's not forget everybody's favorite, the mosquito moms.
Yeah.
Moms.
I thought they were going to tie in the concept of spirals to the whole Fibonacci number and how spirals are in everything, that golden number. That maybe there's some cosmic spiral at the center of everything, but they didn't really touch on that.
Might not be as prevalent in Japanese culture. Just discussions. I mean, like, we've talked about, well, not me, but I know about the golden ratio, even though it's never come up with anything I do. But
like the spirals in the arms of a galaxy are the same as the spirals in a snail shell.
Yeah, no, it's like, he spent all this time, well, maybe it's for kids, and maybe that's why, or a younger audience, and maybe that's why he, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of opportunities. He talks about all these instances of seeing spirals, but for somebody who researched spirals as much as he did, he doesn't like educate everyone about all of these interesting coincidences or parallels throughout science. But Now I'm taking my score down even further because you did it.
Down to -1.
Yeah.
-1.6 to be specific. -1.6 repeating. So Marie, you said you wanted to touch on the kind of the color.
Well, no, I just see that there's questions about color. Like moving on in your
If people, kind of thought, like, if this book was in color, because there are little bits of it that are in color, but primarily it's black and white. If the book was completely in color, would that add or detract from it?
I prefer the black and white.
I think the black and white is actually very effective.
Yeah. In fact, that's a criticism that I have of the book. I don't think any of the portions in color like actually add that much.
No, me neither. Like notably the start of chapter 13 is in color and then it just fades out. It's like, but why? I honestly thought I was like, okay, this just means this is going to be scarier. Catherine concurs. I hope everyone sees that. But it ends. It shows the tenement housing and then it goes right back to black and white. Yep.
The color, like the specific use of color in these like colored sections is kind of strange. Like it's very soft. It's like almost pastel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas the black and white sections are very striking and distinct, and then the color is I don't know, kind of like soft and like fuzzy and vague. It just doesn't have like the punch of the black and white.
I think they could have played with color, like with the mosquito moms. They could have just used really bright, vibrant red for the blood and just only red for that, for example.
I mean, part of it is also just a consequence of how it was published. Like a lot of Japanese comics magazines, like only allot a few pages of color, and it's almost like at random. Almost all of the book would have been guaranteed to not have been in color. There's very little manga in general. I'm trying to think if there's any books at all that are all. There must be, but it's not like a common thing for like a book or like a full story to be completely in color.
I think it's becoming more common, but
yeah, it's a newer thing, but I don't think it's a thing in magazines.
Yeah.
And I want to say a lot of what Junji Ito wrote were short stories that were in magazines, and I associate his work so strong black and white, and he does it so well. I'd have a hard time even imagining him working with color.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me. One, Carlos is right. Like, I remember reading Ghost in the Shell, and some pages would be in color, and it's just like, well, they're not more important. It's not like, highlighting anything at all. It's just like, well, this is like the first few pages of the next story, so sometimes they're in color, sometimes they're not. But also, it reminds me of Edward Gorey would sometimes have stuff in color, and it did not improve it. I feel like he was really good at the black and white, and I think that adding color is just an extra dimension that didn't necessarily need to be added, and it was not as adept in. And I think the same is true of Junji Ito.
I mean, but it's also like, I don't know. I don't think we can fault him necessarily for it. It's like, I'm sure like not every person who writes a book for like Marvel or DC wants a bunch of alternate covers at the end of their book, or like alternate covers like period. But the publishing company is like, well, we got to have some alternate covers. So they're like, well, I guess that's what we're going to do then. And you know, I'm sure when the publisher came to him and was like, well, Uzumaki is going to be the first story in the book, in the magazine this month, like the first few pages have to be in color. He was probably like, well, this is like not the hill I want to die on, so.
Yeah. So let's throw something at the wall that sticks, and like, let's do the least amount as possible, the least intrusive as possible.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like it's a good way of describing it, because there's some of them where it's like, you know, the Jack in the Box story has a background, and the background, like, it's such pale blue that it basically could have been black and white. You know, like one of the images, and the friend, her face is so pale that it's like you can see the color, but yeah.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't mind color, but I don't think it would have improved it like significantly, if at all.
The only thing that I think is sort of interesting about it is it's sort of just a reminder that the way that we read this is like nowhere close to the way it was originally experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways that almost makes it two separate works. Like if you, I don't know, just so like a short show where it's possible, right? Like sitting down and watching like all of Fleabag is doable in a day. But a lot of people experience it in like really short chunks. And I would like argue that the two experiences are different. And even if you just sit down and like watch it as a chunk and just let it play through, each of those episodes is going to have the the title card, like to say that this is Fleabag, and also the credits. And like you don't need the credits 6 different times, but you're gonna get them until you hit skip. Like it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
And that part I think is at least historically interesting. I don't know. And like sometimes people go back and change it. Like if we go to like Watchmen, like the experience of reading Watchmen now is very distinct from the experience of reading Watchmen then, not just because it's serialized, but because they've completely updated the color. And like the color process that they used was an older color process, basically because they didn't want to spend as much money on it. Like they had already done a prestige book with The Dark Knight Returns, which has a much more sophisticated color process. But like the original Watchmen has a really beautiful version of a really sloppy color process. Like,
I don't know.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a version of this book probably one day that just takes the color out and just makes it completely black and white.
Yeah. Like, I don't think, like, I mean, we're kind of just beating a dead horse, but like things like this, Carlos's favorite, like these images, I don't think would be as successful with color in them.
Yeah.
It's just better this way.
I feel like the way that he uses like black and white, I can't really describe it, but there's just like a way that he uses them that's so like effective in like making things look airy, and it kind of like ties into like the way that he like draws the monsters in this book, where you take something that like a zombie, which could very easily look kind of like goofy and cheesy and silly, if you did it in a certain way, but like the way that he like draws, like the way that he draws something like that, or the way that he draws like the like blood-sucking mosquito women. It's just
it's both less horrific and more, because it's like you don't have the like not as gory because you don't have the red blood, but at the same time you're filling that in with your own mind. And you know, I think like the image that Jolie showed, you know, like I think we're all adding different interpretations to how her skull is going to look as it becomes more of a spiral.
This one is my particular favorite.
ooh, yeah.
Where it's like ever since The Lighthouse, I love everything that has to do with anything in a lighthouse. But I find that his art is very high contrast until you get to these depictions of horror. And then he uses shades, many marks, many different types of marks, smaller, varied marks, thicker, thinner lines. It's chaotic and it's like very Horvath-y and again, unsettling. And it kind of ties into your next question which is like about the horror and that page turn.
Yes.
Oh my God. I dreaded turning every single page in this book, especially at the start of it, because I just didn't, especially when you get to the part where they open the tub, because the dad is like, they're like, where is he? He hasn't been around. But he had this big package delivered, and
Oh God.
and then you turn the page and it's this. What the fuck?
Yeah, it peaked early.
I mean,
I don't did it.
not necessarily that it peaked early, but it definitely like puts its cards on the fucking table.
Yeah.
I don't know. That and when she stabs her ear with the scissors are like the two worst images. Like that's why, like as the further I got from that part, the more I was able to handle the book.
Yeah. I don't know if everyone caught that comment, but Catherine is a total freak and the tub is her favorite.
Well,
The tub is so good.
It actually is really good.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
he
But-
died
Thank
happy.
you for all of your days.
Yeah. Club tub.
Club tub.
Yeah.
Top thumpers.
You have a whiskey drink?
Have a vodka drink.
I don't know. I do also like the skull spiral. In that way, I don't know. That story was a personal favorite. Just because of the imagery, like where she just like self-destroys into the spiral. And is sort of into it. I mean, the really intense part of it is that like she's into it, which is like, I think that's sort of like throughout the book is that like when the characters are far gone, it's not quite by choice, but it's like the mania isn't like, these aren't gothic characters, right? Like a lot of like, or at least in the Frankenstein model where they're sort of like tortured by like what has happened. Like they're not, like they are deeply like into it. Which is, I don't know.
They're into it in a weird way that is like as if this shit happens every day in this town, like totally normal.
But they've into it not in like they're not in control though.
Yeah.
Right? Like I mean, not in the like they're not buying into it with any kind of like conscious decision making, because it seems like something is making them do this.
Cult-like, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It also, I mean, like, nobody's moving out of Silent Hill either. So.
Wait, what?
Nobody is moving out of Silent Hill either. It's
Well,
another.
You can't move out of Silent Hill.
Yeah.
You can't.
I don't know, but I think it does go back to like the point that I was making earlier. Like it's weird to like something that is very deeply unsettling is to be in a situation where you know something is like desperately wrong or like somebody is like self-destructive. Like a lot of these characters like very obviously are self-destructive and like you feel like you can't do anything about it. Like even, I don't know, the hair story was really intense. And like she knew like, yeah, I'm getting like all this attention and like it's sort of mesmerizing, but like it's not real. Like I want to get rid of it. And then the other character is like, you know, like this is what I like. I want this power, but like gives into sort of the self-destructive part of it, and I don't know, it is like that. That was because like a lot of the story is like really visceral and like body horror. But like for me, like the more distressing thing is like, I don't know, like all of the relatives and like friends that are like just on a path to destruction and you can't do anything about like that's, it's sort of like Hereditary. And I think like Hereditary does it like more intensely, but like the real terror in Hereditary isn't like the cult, like that's awful. The real terror is sort of like just like the self-destructive family dynamic. Like,
I read this review of Midsommar where they talk about like there's a lot of foreshadowing where like they'll have murals of exactly what they're going to do that appear earlier in the movies, and if the characters were kind of paying, or like Wicker Man, where it's like, you know, paying attention, you know what's going to happen. But like the horror is like we all see what's going to happen, and yet we still let it happen. Like, you know, not just like the characters in it, but the you know, the audience, and it's just like we know this is coming. We don't look away. You know, none of this is a surprise. It's like this sense of doom. What the review was trying to make point.
And somebody, I think it was Oliver maybe that had said it, but there's like a sense of acceptance among the characters. Like we all kind of said it. Like you're bringing up Midsummer, even in this book, like the characters have accepted their fate. The main character is completely horrified by the things that are happening around her, yet she's totally cool with all of it happening.
I mean, I don't think she's cool with all of it.
Not
like
cool with it.
Oh, but she's all about being the May Queen. Did you see that smile on her face?
I mean, she did try to escape.
She comes around to it.
Like futile, but
yeah, she's
she
like,
makes
you know,
the attempt.
It could be worse. I could be the flayed guy in the barn.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about Midsommar or this character?
Yeah, I mean, both, right?
No, but the character in this book, I mean, she tries to get out, but it's unsuccessful.
Anyone else think it was weird that she saw the wart on her father's foot and it was a spiral and she didn't do anything about it? Like she'd seen like spirals go bad like 6 times before, and then she's like, eh.
What was she gonna do? Like cut it
off? Okay, duly noted.
Yes.
If I see a spiral anywhere on your body, I will grab a knife and then I will just start hacking.
Or leave the house.
That too.
Yeah, that's just like something that they never seem to do correctly, is like time the leaving of the houses in any Japanese horror. They either aren't leaving fast enough, or they like, you know, they move in. Like they just, there's never a good situation when it involves the haunting in a house.
I don't know. Like on the one hand, I completely agree. Like any rational person should not be doing what you're doing right now. But at the same time, it's like, well, I guess it's just inevitable. Like, people just got to do stupid shit in horror movies. Otherwise, you won't have sort of those scenarios that generate the horror. But also, I don't know, like, we're sort of witnessing and reading this kind of removed from the situation. So I really can't predict what I will do if I was in something. Like, maybe I will also freeze or do irrational shit, like not leave this house. You know, I'm like, sure, there's a spiral, but all my Emma Frost statues are also here. So I don't know if I'm going to leave. I mean, it's hard.
If I saw the smoke from a crematorium form a massive spiral in the
Why
sky,
would we be living by a crematorium?
and then the sky formed screaming faces, and then the smoke spiraled down from the sky into a nearby lake, I'm getting the fuck out. Like, I'm at least putting my house up for sale.
Yeah, bitch, you can just rebuy all that shit.
But the spiral won't let you. It seems like it's sort of like this omnipresent. I mean, it's kind of like a good out for Junji Ito because it's a nice sort of plot mechanic that you can just sort of. Well, the spiral did it.
Is it like Dairy and It?
Sure.
Well, I mean, like, it's not. I mean, not just Dairy, but you know, I mentioned Silent Hill, and then also
Dead Space. Reminds me so much of Dead Space.
Ooh, that was so scary.
But there's a Japanese. Well, there's a video game. It's called Siren, and it's basically. It reminded me, like, it was probably lifted very liberally from this book, but you know, it's like the whole town has turned into bloodthirsty monsters, and I was like, well, why don't they leave? You know, why are you still here? But you know, I think somebody made a parallel to like where we are today. I was like, could you imagine in February if they were like, oh, there's a disease and we can do, you know, if we just bunker down for a bit, it will go away.
But ironically, that problem is resolved by not leaving.
Yeah, well, it's just like
it's sort of, I mean, maybe a better metaphor is like
a big hurricane?
No. Like white supremacy and like racism in the United States, like it sort of like existed for a while, like we had put it on the back burner, and then like all of a sudden it was everywhere, and it was like, well, shit, I guess we should have fucking taken care of some of this at some point, but.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of like, oh, I guess this was here the whole time, but now we're just saying the quiet parts out loud.
Yeah. But, you know.
Well, I mean, to be like, I think your mileage may vary with that one.
But, I mean, also, like, Homeboy at the very first chapter is like, we need to get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like in the first, like, 15 pages. And she's like, no, I mean.
It's fine.
Yeah. And, like, in the first couple of pages, she's like, oh, shit, another whirlwind. Like, that should have, like, tripped.
Like it does. Like it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Like, uh-oh, like, there's something wrong. But, you know, you go about, you live your life, and then, your dad ends up in a tub folding himself into a spiral. Like, what are you gonna do? Can we talk for a second about the hands in the tub? I just feel like the detail.
Well, he's like, yeah.
It's so amazing.
He folded himself up so good, even Marie Kondo could not have done it better.
I knew she was a demon. She's a spiral demon.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah, it sparks so much joy.
I've arranged your home into just a perfectly organized spiral. Like,
She folds your jeans and she folds you.
Oh, yes.
there is a manga of
Marie Kondo as a folding thing?
no.
Oh, fuck. No, just
Well, maybe. I don't know. It all depends on your mindset, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So there's, I mean, if we want to keep moving on, let's see.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
well,
but
there's
the cosmic horror aspect.
Yeah, so that's kind of one thing I wanted to bring up as well. So Junji Ito has specifically said that H.P. Lovecraft is one of his influences, and I think that's pretty obvious when you read his work. At least I felt it was kind of this idea of there being sort of this inhuman evil, and inhuman not just in the sense of it's like it's a werewolf or something like that, but inhuman in the sense of like it is like fundamentally alien to humans. It's not truly comprehensible. That's kind of what I don't know how familiar others are with Lovecraft's work. I'm like semi-familiar with it. I know a lot of it by reputation, but not as much firsthand. But I don't know, for anyone who maybe is more familiar, how they feel about how much this kind of like fits into that, or if you think it does, or if it doesn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, like even I thought like maybe the first couple of stories, I'm like, yeah, he's sort of traveling in those same kind of spaces for sure.
Well, there's, I want to say Shadows Over Innsmouth, maybe? I might have the name of that book wrong. But it's very much a creepy small town of all these inbred people, and they mutate into like fish monsters.
Yeah.
Which
He was
is very
writing
disturbing.
about North Carolina? No.
Yeah.
No.
Uh-huh.
And
He was writing about Massachusetts. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do feel like there is.
There's like a Lovecraft influence, but like with sprinklings of Japanese influence.
Yeah, and I feel like there is sort of a fundamental, like there's a big thematic difference. Because for Lovecraft, it was sort of like, it wasn't that like these things are unknowable. It's just that like knowing them will
drive you insane.
Yeah, drive you insane. Will warp you to the point. But there is like a vague like cause and effect and like rhyme or reason. I feel like the like sort of it's a different sort of horror. Like for H.P. Lovecraft, it's sort of like understanding the universe is like also understanding that it doesn't care about you and is like seeking your destruction. I feel like this is sort of like, it is still seeking your destruction, but it is fundamentally unknowable. Like, why is any of this happening? Who can say? It seems to have a vague sort of system, but it's like just like both unknowable and unescapable. So I think it is like cosmic horror, like, like they're sort of vague cousins to each other. I'm not sure which one is the cousin that drinks blood, but they
both drink blood.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's sort of they're distinct. They're very.
So do we think the ending is something that he had at the start, or was it more like, oh, I got to wrap this up, so here's what I'm gonna do?
Well, actually, he talks about, because he grew up in one of those Japanese longhouses, which is for very poor Japanese people, that's where they would house them. And he wanted to make a story about the longhouses, and they appear earlier. And I knew that about this, and I was like, well, this doesn't relate anything. And then later on, you realize, like, oh, that's how this relates. So he did. He wanted to tell a story about the Japanese longhouse that was just really long, and he couldn't think of it. And he was like, wait, what if I have it spiral? And so
what if I arranged them in a circular pattern?
Yeah, that is the origin of this, and that is where the spirals, the genesis of the spirals comes from.
So So the whole point of the creepy machinery is to make more of these longhouses, which we should grab at so we can solve our homelessness issue. Just gonna start generating longhouses, right?
Haunted affordable housing is better than no affordable housing.
Yes.
So,
I kind of felt like the ending was like, I don't know, I wasn't super in love with the ending, but I also didn't hate it. I thought it was like fine. I feel like the ending isn't really the point of the story. Like the ending is not really what the story is about. The ending is just there to give you some kind of resolution to it. But really the meat of the story is like all this like weird shit happening in the town, and it's all kind of interconnected.
Yeah, and I appreciate how there's just enough of a resolution to make me satisfied, but he doesn't provide any answers, which I like.
You will not be angry.
And I also like how he seems to leave the ending with the implication that this whole thing is kind of a cyclical thing, which is very cool. Because now, like, we've gone into the middle of the spiral, and now it seems like at the end it just reverts back to the beginning, which is very interesting.
And that is one aspect of like the horror in the book that is kind of a recurring theme in a lot of works of horror, is the idea of a place being haunted, that there is like something like geographic to the evil, that it can like reside within a certain location, that like a certain location can just be like innately evil. And I'm not quite sure like where the kind of genesis of that particular like fixation in horror comes from. I do think it is kind of interesting.
It does show up in Lovecraft, and so, especially a lot of his early stories, where the doom of I keep saying doom, but it's but yeah, there's this town where like they kill all these Murloc type creatures, and then they all rise up hundreds of years later and come back and kill them. And, you know, it's like the town is doomed from the beginning because of some evil back in the past. We don't get that explanation for this, but
I don't see, but like to me, like it's not evil per se. Like there's no intent to it. Like at least that her boyfriend seems to come to the conclusion that like, oh, it's just this thing and it's just doing its thing. Like it doesn't have any sort of nefarious intent. Like it's almost like this machine that's just been turned on and it just keeps chugging along, which to me is actually more scary than sort of this notion that like there's this malicious thing that's trying to harm you. Like but this thing just doesn't care, right? It's just this mechanism and it's just going to keep doing its thing.
Well, it wants people looking at it.
Right.
Which is what it's pulling all the people. Yeah, you're right. Like the people of the town, you know, they kind of embrace it. They're like, all right, we're ropey people monsters now, and we're going to be sucked into a hole, and it's going to be great, and this is exactly what we all want. And but like, what the spiral wants is people looking at it, and then Kiri and Shuichi? Yeah, they end up looking at each other. I don't know. I couldn't read too much into that. I couldn't decipher too much of it. They're the only two characters not staring at the spirals. They're staring at each other.
I also want to mention, like, because it is scary and frightening and gross and sort of like viscerally like, ugh. But I really like how he still manages to put in a lot of whimsy and ironic, and honestly, some very cute moments that were so like, I know they turn into snails, it's gross, but like they do with each other, and it's kind of sweet. And then that lover story, like it's very horrific, but there's still a lot of whimsy happening, which I totally appreciated. Yes, and like hair, I just love the dueling hair thing. That was, I mean, it ended badly. It's horrific, but I mean, who doesn't like a good hair off? I do. I love it. Love it.
You know how, like, when you're sleeping in bed with someone and you have your arm in a certain way?
Wait, hang on.
and
Is this
your
going to get
arm-
personal? Because I feel like we should discuss this first before sharing with the group.
You can only last for so long before your arm gets painfully numb
Mhm.
and you just have to move. No one can hold just a normal huggy position forever without having one arm cut off. So they're going to be in real pain after a little while. So that's not that romantic.
They were already in pain. I mean, they're twisted.
Yes,
Like,
it's eternal suffering. So
If that isn't love, I don't know what is. Eternal suffering in a twist. Snail love.
it's a love story.
Hmm.
There was one of the biggest criticisms of this, because this has gotten, like, even for being a monster of, not monster, but a pillar of Japanese horror, that, you know, people have criticized it quite a bit for the humor.
but why? That's
They really,
cool.
for whatever reason, I feel like it's like if everyone, I feel like if everyone agrees like something's great, somebody has to say like, no, actually it's bad for these reasons. And it's like, can't they just enjoy a thing?
I think it just enhances the effect because now, I'm like, wait, I'm laughing at this, and this snail scene is evoking other kinds of emotions, but like, see, it's the spiral. It's working on you, like it's drawing you in. Like I'm not questioning this anymore because it's cute and it's funny.
Hmm.
I never got that from the snails.
Here's kind of cute.
The eyes. No.
Yeah. They were
I
particularly.
would not do it with the snails, but with the snails with each other was.
No one was talking about that. You brought that up. That's kind of interesting.
Hey,
Look,
hey,
look, Sean. What Pat is trying to say
is you should turn into a snail.
he wants you to be the snail to his snail.
Yeah, my back is all meat.
What's happening right now?
It's a line. It's a line in the book.
Apparently, we're gonna have some escargot, is what's happening right now.
They're carrying a kid. Snail.
That's like, that would be like the greatest pickup line if you're to go up to someone and be like, "Hey, you want a little escargot?" You know what I'm saying?
My back is all meat, baby.
Do you want to escargot?
Yeah. Well, no. Okay. Well, I don't want to leave the snail thing, as funny as it is, but about the whimsy.
Go. Yeah.
Okay. So the three kids who are like, who when they blow out of their mouths, they create hurricanes. Like even that's whimsical. Just the depiction of it, and then suddenly all of the townspeople that are in the longhouse. They create like wind from their mouths. Like,
that's right.
Just, Just the.
No. Anybody can do it. That's like they have to walk around. Even that's like sort of
like
silly.
even the gentlest gesture generates like, which was actually my least favorite story, because it wasn't so much horrific as like, oh, everyone has superpowers now. We're gonna have dueling tornadoes.
And then just riding the tornadoes too.
Oh yeah, like tornado windsurfers. Like that was those guys blew in. They're wearing windbreakers. They had stupid spiky hair. They looked like they were gonna rape the town's women. Like
we're having a great time. We're flying around in tornadoes. We got these cool sunglasses. We eat snails all the time.
They step into this book from a completely different manga.
Yeah.
Starting at chapter 4, I was sort of amazed. Like, it's sort of like things slowly go off the rails when they start to, like, it gets weirder and weirder. But, like, the change in tone from the story right before, where they, like, are forced to live in the longhouse, to, like, right after, where there's a reporter who shows up and suddenly, like, it's like post-apocalyptic like horror story is like massive. Like it's a very that's also one of the things in the book that I'm not sure how I feel about it, like because it goes from sort of like oh, like goosebumps. Or I don't know, I think I was talking with Catherine about this book before, and how it's like a weird mixture of like Stephen King and like Erie, Indiana. Like it is very adult, but it also is like, oh, like small town Japan. But as soon as like the reporter shows up, like that chapter, like there's a complete change in tone. There's no like small town Japan anymore. It's just like weird post-apocalypse and like one or two things, not like a bunch of things from like the pages before. Like, I don't know, the change in tone was sort of very abrupt, and I'm sort of like trying to figure out how I feel about it still.
But I feel like he brings it back to the tone that I like when they start to try to make it out of the town. So then it's like, I feel like that's a horror story again.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh.
One thing I did kind of want to mention that I thought was funny is that something that we didn't really talk about, despite it being like by far the most iconic image in this book, is like this one right here of the woman with her like eye going into the spiral. This image right here, I saw this like years ago before I had even heard of the book. I had seen this.
I'm bringing it back.
Fine.
Oh no.
Carlos, what was the other book you bought?
Oh, so this is actually on loan, but it's a collection of his short stories.
Oh, good. Those
Smash.
are great.
Yeah, and like once again, like very weird,
Yeah.
dreamlike. I feel like though, an interesting thing about this book is like it had to be consistent, so it was like grounded in something, except for the last, kids like, blowing whatever, like blowing hurricanes out of their faces. Like his short work is interesting because it can like just go like completely bonkers and like didn't need to continue like at any point. Like, I don't know, the first story, is it the first story? Yeah, the first story in this book is about like vampire bats. Sort of. It's about a few things. It's about having an eating disorder and vampire bats, and then this guy, like, the vampire bats are keeping this character's head alive just by continually feeding it blood. It doesn't make any sense, but yes, it's very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of the like I don't know, like yeah, it could go completely off the rails, and this like could not go completely off the rails until the very end. Because you had to continue it, at least something. Or you had to explain like why the mosquito women disappeared.
I
Yeah.
thought it
Because
was
the whole
odd.
town did.
Like at no point did she actually attempt to investigate this. Like there's no effort on her part. It's just things kept happening to her.
Yeah, it was like at first she was very preoccupied with, feeding Shuichi, making sure he was nourished, and then she even forgot about him and like visiting him, and then just these like innumerable horrors happened to her, from which she seemingly can't escape, but really doesn't run away from, and then they come back together towards the end where he's clearly like a little bit mad, and then but she doesn't really notice, and then the whole town gets swallowed into a spiral.
Also, the Japanese fleet gets taken out.
Yeah, like
I mean, there's a lot of in between stuff that I omitted, but
I meant, like,
yeah.
I thought that was like, I mean, I thought that was the most Deus Ex Machina or whatever term I should use, where it's just like hand wave away, like, oh, why isn't anyone helping them? Oh, because the whole Japanese fleet gets destroyed in one whirlpool in 5 seconds.
I think it's yes. I think it's supposed to be like, I think it's supposed to signify, oh, there's nobody coming to save them.
Yeah.
Like, they're not making it out of here.
Mm-hmm. Like, everything about this thing is terrifying. Like, I think Carlos had mentioned it before, is that there's no explanation for any of it. There's no reason why it happened. There's no reason why it went away. It could come back again. No power in the verse will protect anybody from the weird spiral or anything that the spiral creates, like any kind of monsters. So like that in itself is the scariest thing ever. But yeah, like I don't know if there's really anything else to, like, drive. Does anyone have anything else that they think that the story says other than really what's here and what we've already discussed?
I'm starting to feel like, I don't know, like maybe I'm drawing lines where I shouldn't draw, but don't you think there's something to be said for like a tornado destroying a poor longhouse, which I would think would kind of be like the Japanese version of the trailer park? Like, is that the connection that's supposed to be made? Like, generation of tortoise? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking way too hard into this.
I do think there is something to what I was talking about earlier, that like there are like sort of terrifying things that we just sort of ignore. And it's like you go through it and then you're like not supposed to talk about it. Like,
so that was like for me for like childhood trauma. It's like, I hear this but I don't like it.
I mean,
and like how it does feel inescapable sometimes. I mean, and it's like Shuichi is interesting because he's like the one character that's like, we need
to leave.
Yeah, we need to get out of here. Like, this is we shouldn't.
It's normal, it's not normal to have your eye recede into your skull. And everyone else is like, well, this is kind of weird, but
they're like, it's the hot new fashion.
Yeah, it's like, well, that was strange, but I got school tomorrow, and for the next 2 weeks, my hair is going to compete with this other girl. Like, you got stuff to think about.
Yeah.
But even that, like, so like there are elements, and I don't think that he's like planning out the thematic parts of this necessarily, but sort of like that dream creation like does like bring things out. Like there are parts of this that like specifically about the hair story, about like beauty standards that we put on women and especially like teenage girls, and like struggling with it, and even of like eating disorders. Like one of the results of the hair is that like both characters are malnourished, and what is the main character's name?
Yuri?
Here, and like we know like that's going on like with like young women, and it's something, I feel like it is something that's gotten better, but it's something that still continues.
Yeah, it just seems like everything, all of the horror that happens, it levels the playing field for everybody. It puts everyone in the same position of powerlessness. But it doesn't, I don't feel like the book says, or maybe doesn't even want to say anything about how those issues are dealt with.
Real quick, I just want to make it like a snarky joke. Nowadays, when you starve yourself, they call it intermittent fasting. That's all I want to say. You can continue.
Okay, so it's almost like 9 o'clock, so maybe we should start wrapping it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did want to make a point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, yeah.
This is like in college where we talk about in mathematics. We were talking about like spirals and considering infinity, and I just remember talking about there's a lot of mathematicians who study infinity, and then to take a break, they'll also do things like try and prove that Shakespeare didn't write his plays, or all these other like conspiracy theory things. And it's like if you spend too long studying infinity, it warps your brain, and you just like to make it easier on yourself, you go about proving things that are completely unprovable. I was just like, maybe Junji Ito has experienced that a bit, with staring at all these spirals.
If you stare too long into the abyss stares back into you.
A bit of that.
Going in a conspiracy forum.
Also, there's
Have you heard about this Pizzagate thing?
Yeah. But yeah, there's also the cut story. Like we're talking about like thematically and how are these things building, and there's like the cut story, and like it is very different. Like it fits in this universe, but at the same time, like I get why he was like, this really doesn't advance the story, because it's like, like it did feel different.
Was the cut story published?
I'm not sure.
I don't think it was published in the original run. I think it was only included in these anthologies.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the criticisms of it, was that it was like it didn't add anything. And I was like, it did feel different, but it's like, it's like I couldn't explain exactly why, but I guess it goes to like the overarching horror that he's trying to build, and that one felt just different enough that I could see why it was cut.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're ready to go around again. So I'll start. I think I'm still at an 8. I did really enjoy this book. I do think that Junji Ito's art and his sense of horror, and just to touch on a kind of a question we had asked earlier about like what is this book sort of about. I think the fundamental horror of the book is kind of being trapped by something that is like alien, and also kind of being trapped in these sort of like compulsions and these sort of like behaviors and situations that you can't really escape from. I think that's kind of the fundamental horror here. But I really enjoyed the book. There are aspects of it that I didn't like so much. The episodic nature, I was a little lukewarm on. I think the book is a little bit too long. I think there were probably a couple stories that could have been cut out. But overall, I think it's very exceptional. Keith.
All right. I gave it a 0. I'll raise my score to a 1 over a 0. But yeah, no, I knew I was not going to enjoy this book as soon as I started reading it, or even before I started reading it. And I will say I'm glad I read it. I've appreciated reading it, but it is not my genre. So it's not for me. Lucy?
I still like the art a lot. Like, it's like a 9 or a 10. It's really great. I don't know how I feel about the story now, because I never made the connection that maybe it's about like just feeling trapped in this shitty apartment-esque complex because you're broke and you just have to put up with the children blowing whirlwinds down your house because you got nowhere else to go. I don't know. So I'm a little bummed out now. I want to hear more people complain about how gross it is. So, Jolie, will you please tell me more about how gross it is?
It is disgusting. It is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. I don't know if that's enough complaining for you, but I tried. I gave it, I think, what did I give it? Like an 8, which was like an average of a 6.5 for the story and like a 7 or 8. I don't know. Anyway, my score stays the same. I'm definitely interested in reading.
That doesn't work.
More. It almost did. More Junji Ito, except for the fact that I'm very scared of being terrified. So, like Keith, I'm probably just going to retreat back into the stuff that I'm used to.
Just read the cat one.
You'll sort of retreat back into your shell, so to speak.
Back into my meat shell. Oh, God. I'm honestly never going to look at snails the same way again. Anyway, I picked Patrick last time. I'm going to pick him again this time.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my 8.5. I really enjoyed it. The art is amazing, and it set out to freak me out, and it freaked me out. So good job, Junji Ito. Carlos, I don't think you've gone.
No, I haven't gone. I am a huge horror fan, so sort of like the opposite reaction of Keith. Like, I really liked it. I found it like distressing in the ways that I like. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like sort of just my impression, and I don't really know this for sure, is that he just is like, all right, what is disturbing about this, or like, where is this idea going to go? And I think he arrives at some very interesting conclusions. He also is just a really good like draftsman. Like, I don't know, like being part of Tub Club, like it is like really distressing, but like the thought that went into that illustration is really fantastic.
Like the way he composes shots are just exquisite.
Yes. Yeah, I think the art in the book is a 10, in my opinion.
All right, you get to pick someone.
Oh shit, I forgot. Sean, go ahead.
I'm gonna stick with the 8. I really enjoyed it, and I would like to read more of his stuff. But I almost feel like someone needs to take what he's done and then, what do you call it when you transition it to like the North American market? Like you have someone just do a little polish on the dialogue. Yes, localize it a little bit instead of doing a direct translation. I don't know if that would be insulting.
Yeah, Cartoon Network is making a TV series out of it.
Okay.
I think there's an anime in the works.
I know there's an anime based on one of his short story collections.
Is it Sony?
No, the Junji Ito collection.
Just all the mix and stuff.
They made this into a movie. They also made it into a video game, but those were Japanese only releases.
All right, who's next?
Alexander?
I will keep it at an 8. I love the artwork. The story was really good, and I'm definitely going to read more Junji Ito.
Do you like horror, Alex?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You sounded real enthusiastic, so I was like, let's just check in on that one. Okay, cool. And I think the last to go is Catherine, if you're still with us. Oh, here we go. So I said I would read aloud her final thoughts. I love all things horror and macabre, so it's still a 9 for me. I've read it several times over. Wow. Over the last 10 years. That's dedication. I always seem to come back to it. Each time I think I get more out of it. LOL. Also, sorry, my mic has been weird this time. I know.
We appreciate you joining us, Catherine.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that wraps it up in a tight little spiral.
Hey,
Mhm.
what's next month's book?
Batman.